Welcome to our first lesson on the Age of Exploration. So, in this unit we're going to be talking about how basically the peoples of the world get to know each other a little bit better. I shouldn't say a little better, a lot better, whether they want it or not. Up to this point in history, up till about 1450 AD/CE, however you want to put that, the world has been more regional, meaning people have been in their regions, they've known about other people here and there, but there hasn't been big interconnecting things going on. You know, Europe is Europe, Middle East is Europe, is the Middle East. Are there things going on between those two areas? Yeah, they're right next to each other, but they're still their own regions in many respects. You know, minus the Crusades, but we talked about that in the last unit. You know, Sub-Saharan Africa is very much its own region in the different areas there. West Africa is its own region. Do they know about the Middle East? Yeah, definitely. Especially with most of West Africa being Islamic at the time. And people like Mansa Musa, haven't talked about him yet, will make a Hajj or travel over to Mecca in present-day Saudi Arabia. Anyways, just saying that they know about each other, but they are their own regions. So West Africa is West Africa. South Africa is South Africa. The Swahili city-states, which is East Africa, is East Africa. If this is, again, I hope I'm not saying too many things you're not too familiar with, but just giving the idea these are different regions. India is its own region. Even though it's divided up in its own kingdoms, it's its own thing. The Middle East is its own thing. Europe is its own thing, like I said before. China, definitely dominant in its sphere in East Asia, but it is, again, that's the own region that we refer to as East Asia these days. You know, it'd be like China, Korea, and Japan mostly. We also have Southeast Asia there, and there's a connection between India and China there. But anyways, they're regional. They really aren't getting up in each other's grill a ton. When I say that, it's like Europe definitely is not really involved with China. Is there some little things happening there? Yeah, like I talked about Marco Polo earlier. Marco Polo walked to China. Well, sailed and walked. The both, but anyways. And then came back. But you just have those little things there that are more exceptions to the rule. You know, these places are the regions that are staying separate until this time period. Until the Age of Exploration, where the entire world comes to know each other. And you find a whole new section of the world that, well, they did not know about each other. And that would be what we call the Americas today. The continents of North America and South America and all the peoples that are on it. You know, they are their own regions, and they were separated in their own regions. Like you had the Mesoamerican, which would be Central America peoples. You had the Plains Native Americans more north, and you had people like the Incas and everything in the Andes Mountain region, and just everything in between. They're definitely their own regions, even in the Americas. But then all of a sudden, kaboom! Everybody's getting to know everyone when they just didn't before. And there's a lot of negatives and positives come out of it. I'm not going to go into that a ton in this lesson, but it's hard not to think about them as we get into this. So, anyways, with that, what is the Age of Exploration? Why do we say it starts in 1450 to 1600? Well, basically, when I talk about the Age of Exploration here, I'm coming from the European point of view. But at the end of, well, not this lesson, but the end of the unit, we're going to be talking about how it wasn't just the Europeans that were exploring. There were other areas as well, but there's a difference in the outcomes of the European explorations versus others, mainly the Chinese is who I'm referring to, and just kind of, and just how things work out. Like you could say in the way, like who benefits more than others, and in many cases just because of accident, but you also get this idea because of just sense of motivation and just the idea of like, we better do this or we're kind of screwed type thing. Anyways, I'll talk about that a little bit later. So, the very first thing to talk about and why exploration happens, this world exploration, just comes down to the simple idea of the quest for a better life. And when we say the quest for a better life, we're talking about just like the little things in life. Like, notice what I have on the side there. Just a lot of spices. I should put sugar in there, honestly. That's the big one. But sugar, spices, clothing. You see some silk down there in the bottom right. I include those pictures on purpose. But these are things that just make life a little nicer. It's nice to have not bland food. It's nice to have just this option of different foods you can have on a day-to-day basis. Now, if you're thinking, well, I have that today. Yeah, you do. And the reason why you have that is actually because of the Age of Exploration. Especially if you're coming from a European background. But just this idea that you have all these clothes you can get, the idea of how expensive it is, that's when you get into the Industrial Revolution, or how cheap it can be. I'm not getting there yet, but just having these options is just so nice. It makes this little things in life really can make a difference. And if, again, thinking back to the medieval unit, if you were in class, I showed you a clip from the movie A Knight's Tale, where one of the main characters is like, man, I'm going to go take this money I just got, this tons of money I just got, and I'm going to go buy a cupcake. And I try to emphasize the idea that it's very likely that might be the first cupcake he ever has been able to have, or maybe he had one before and just it's his dying dream to have one more because he knows he just wouldn't have the money to. So when he comes into money, hey, can you go buy that cupcake? And today that's something where we're just like, a cupcake. Okay, yeah, they're good, but I got to watch my waistline. It's a big shift between then and now. And the age of exploration is where that all starts coming together and starts changing, because the entire purpose of the age of exploration, as it says right there, was this quest to get trade routes to the good stuff. Europeans realized that they were just at the bottom of the totem pole, you could say. They did not have access to the good stuff, whereas places like India, China definitely, Indonesia, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East had pretty good access to all these things. They had much better lifestyles. In fact, one of the things I talked about in our lesson last time, or when I said last time, last unit, the very last lesson of last unit, which is the Crusades, is that all of a sudden these Europeans are starting to see this better lifestyle, and like, can I get some of that? And it sparks this interest in this idea of like, can we somehow trade for that stuff? Can it be cheaper? Can there be more access to it to everyone? And this really drives Europeans to just find out, can we get a better life overall? Of course, it stops in the top classes, like the idea of your noble classes, kings and queens. But again, look at pretty much all of Western civilization today. You could argue that the lowest among us has easy access to all of these things, if we wish. So, to explain this a little bit better and why this is a big deal and why Europeans are just like, man, we're at the bottom of the totem pole, we need to go find more stuff, I'm going to skip forward a little bit here to this map. I'm just going to try to explain this as best I can by drawing on it. Forgive me for how bad this might be. But if you're not aware, and I can't remember if I've said this before or not, where do most sugar and spice, where does sugar come from in the first place, and where is most of spice production? In fact, most all spices today are produced, I can't say that very well, most all spices today are basically produced in this area of the world. Yeah, there's spices produced in other areas now, but where do they all come from? Basically India, Southeast Asia, and Indonesia. I'm going to erase this, sorry. So, in fact, if I remember correctly, if I'm remembering my lessons correctly, it's somewhere in this area right here where the idea of sugar cane actually comes from. However, I got there, don't know, but that's like the origination of sugar cane. The idea of what we know is just be granulated sugar today. Normal sugar, white sugar, however you want to put that, cane sugar. Now, as it goes, if you have a lot of it there, it's usually cheap to you, meaning, if I grow a bunch of sugar cane and I sell that, I'm going to sell it, well, I'm using made-up numbers here just so you guys have a better understanding. Of course, this isn't what they used 500,000, 2,000 years ago. Let's say you basically produce an ounce of sugar and you sell it to a local merchant or a local marketplace for, say, I don't know, $1 an ounce. Just $1 an ounce. To you that's a lot of money because sugar cane is so easy to grow. And there's so many other people doing it. That's what you got. When I say you, like you're living in Indonesia at this point, on the island of Sumatra or Java. Anyways, well, that merchant that you sold it to at that market for $1 an ounce, then, well, if he doesn't use it or sell it to someone there for a little bit higher price, might see a lot of profit in traveling up here to, say, Southeast Asia, and selling it to another merchant up there for, say, like $5 an ounce. That's more than worth it if you have like 100 ounces or, 100 pounds of sugar and you're selling it for $5 an ounce when you bought it at $1 an ounce. That's worth the trip. That's going to pay for the trip and then some. You're going to be coming back with some pretty good profits. But then that same guy here, most likely they're going to use a lot of the sugar there. That's why they buy it there. But there'll be a merchant there that decides it'll be worth the trip to say, take that sugar over to here. And by the way, this isn't perfect what I'm doing right now. And I have no idea why that line just hit there. Just a second. Got to make sure that's not there. Sorry. And I did not want to go there. Okay. So now you're coming to India. And all that sugar you're bringing, maybe you're bringing 50 pounds of it. Again, I'm just making up numbers. But you brought 50 pounds of sugar and you bought it for $5 an ounce. And now you can sell it to some people for like $10 an ounce. I'd say let's go a little bit higher. Let's say you're selling it for $15 an ounce there in India. That's definitely making a bit of a profit on it. You have less of it because it's being used up. Well, great. Well, then you have a merchant there in India that takes it and buys it at $15 an ounce. And he travels over to the Middle East. He probably sells it earlier than that, but again, just for the example purposes. And he sells it for like $50 an ounce to the people in the Middle East. And maybe you only have like 25 pounds of it left or 20 pounds of the sugar left, since you probably used a lot of it or sold a bunch of it in India. But it easily gets bought up. People really want that. So, of course, if you're in the Middle East and you have sugar, it means you got some money to you. You're not low class. Let's put it that way. If you're eating sugar, you're not low class at all, because that's getting expensive. Well, then you have some merchants in the Middle East that will then take it up to, say, Europe, to say here, to Constantinople, or over here to Italy. And then, I could go both ways. Maybe you sell to Constantinople first and then get to Italy. But again, I'm just trying to give you some examples here. And those merchants are selling it there for $90 an ounce. All of a sudden you get the same ounce of sugar that was produced over here in Indonesia, sold for $1 an ounce, and it gets resold and resold and resold as merchants trade to merchants across Eurasia. And you finally get to Europe, where the Italians and the Byzantines are, the Byzantines are the people in Constantinople are buying it up for $90 an ounce, and then they have people that will walk out to like England and to France and to Germany, out to Eastern Europe, over to Spain, and selling that same sugar. Well, this is the actual price, by the way. Again, last time I looked this up, but in the 1300s CE, AD, however you want to put that again. In the 1300s, about 700 years ago, an ounce of sugar in the Kingdom of England was going would fluctuate anywhere from $120 to $180 an ounce in today's money, meaning in the money that you and I are used to, and the inflated price of the US dollar today. But just think of that. If you go to the supermarket today and you're looking at sugar, I can't remember how much it is an ounce right now, but it's not that expensive. In fact, it's quite cheap. Because there's more of it, but to the Europeans, because that source of sugar was so far away and had to go through so many different hands of buying and selling and trading, that getting sugar was a very high, you had to be king or queen, basically. You had to have a lot of wealth to you to buy just an ounce of sugar. So I think I talked about this also. When you throw a big feast, you're really showing off your wealth. If you're, having like candied ham and things like that, that's way up there. So, just to use that as an example, I hope that made sense as I went through it. But, if you're a European at this point, you're in the Kingdom of Spain or Kingdom of France or Kingdom of England, and you're realizing that maybe there's a different way you can do that. You don't have to deal with trying to get over there, get to China yourself. By the way, do some people want to do that? Yeah, but the Italians are actually quite good about making sure that no one else got in on their trade. The Middle Easterners were very good about making sure no one else got in on their trade. In fact, this is actually one of the reasons why the Fourth Crusade happened. Again, I'm referencing what happened last unit, but why the Crusaders attacked Constantinople instead of Jerusalem. A lot of it had to do with what we're talking about here, controlling the trade of stuff. Anyways, knock out your competition, Constantinople. So, anyways, but basically, people are very protective of these trade routes. I should say empires are very protective of these trade routes. You don't want anybody getting around it. But something happens where they they get undermined a bit, and they do it to themselves. When I say undermine, I'm talking about the Middle Easterners, India and China, unknowingly undermine their own trade routes here. So I'm going to erase this really quick. We're going to go back up here. So, I should have explained number 2 there, the desire for increased fame, glory, and riches. I hope we got that down. I hope that's also really well understood or easily understandable why people would go do that. But let me also put it this way. It's a lot easier to go do that when you realize your life kind of sucks. Like, there's so much more out there. Like, it doesn't take much to get you out of bed and say, I'm going to go. Now, if you have a really good life, you're like, why? Why would I do that? That's a mentality, say, someone from China would have. Why would I go out and do something if there's nothing else out there that's better than what we have? Anyways, I'll come back to that thought process in a later lesson. We're now getting into this. When I talked about the idea that India, China, and the Middle East kind of undermine their own kind of control on this trade, on the sugar and spices, silk and other things that are being traded back and forth, it comes to new technologies, sailing technologies. And I'll go over what those technologies are in just a second. Well, I guess I'll mention them right now. Things like the compass, things we think are just normal today. There's what's called the astrolabe that allows you to measure how far north or south you are in the world. Then there's new sails and ship designs that they're not European. They come from the Middle East. They come from India. They come from China. And all of a sudden the Europeans get a hold of this and they realize, wait a second. We're not able to get our good trade routes walking all the way there, and it's too tough to do that anyways, but what if we could sail there? What if it was easy to do? Then we could bypass all that stuff and maybe even buy that sugar for $1 an ounce. How awesome would that be? Man, we could buy it for $1 an ounce and come back up just like Spain or Portugal or France and sell it even for like $30 an ounce, and we'd make a killing off of that. And that would undermine the Byzantines and the Italians, that's for sure. Oh yeah, that's what happens, by the way. So, once they do start establishing, let me back up just one second. With reasons 1, 2, and 3, the idea of wanting new trade routes, just to get a better life, that's number 1. Number 2, wanting to get that fame and glory and riches and things like that. And then number 3, new sailing technologies. Those are all things that you have that lead to the age of exploration beginning. The 4th one here that I'm about to get into, many European monarchs saw the opportunity to increase their wealth and power by establishing overseas empires. That is not an original reason for exploration, because they did not realize that was a possibility until it was just like, holy cow, this is a possibility, especially when you get the Spanish and then the Portuguese, and later English and French and Dutch explorers coming to the Americas once they find it. And it's so easy to set up empires there. Then they realize, holy cow, we can become more powerful than we ever dreamed was possible. But of course, this becomes a major reason for exploration all the way into the 1700s. Again, the age of exploration, I think the date's a little bit different, but it starts around the 1450s, yes. With the obvious date of 1492 being huge, with Christopher Columbus discovering the Americas. But this whole concept of exploration and just how much can you gain, how big can your empire get, that goes all the way into the 1700s and really doesn't end until the 1900s, the idea of this quest for who can have the big empire, the all-controlling empire. So those are lessons for other days. We'll be getting to that through this whole semester, honestly, what I just kind of referenced there, but it starts here. It's also the reason why I use this unit as really the first real unit of modern world history. The reason why I went through medieval times earlier is, well, I didn't have time in ancient world history to finish it up, and it's very important to know what medieval times are like to understand why you have this motivation for the age of exploration. And that was a rhyming thing, and I didn't mean to do that. So, anyways, but just know this becomes a huge thing through that age of exploration. What can you claim? But it wasn't an original one. And if you were to see, say, a question on the quiz saying which one of these 4 was not the original reason for exploration, number 4 is the answer. Now, last thing we'll get into is the technologies. Simply put, here's your 3 major technologies. Compass, astrolabe, caravel. Now, is there like the idea of star charts and things like that? Yes. But these are the technologies that come from the East, places like India and China and the Middle East, that really help out the Europeans when they get it and they start using it a lot more, or I should say more for this purpose of exploration and taking risks in the world to just go kind of have a go-get-'em type of moment. If you don't know what a compass is, you hopefully should know what that is by now. Just let you know which direction you're sailing in the world. Astrolabe, which is the picture on the top, that allows you to know how far north and south you are in the world. Although I will mention it does not allow you to know how far east or west you're going in the world. I'll talk about that in a later lesson in this unit, especially when we're talking about Christopher Columbus. He knew how far north and south he was going. He did not know how far east and west he was going. And so it was kind of a crapshoot for him. He was just like, I hope I get there. I'm not really sure how far I have to go. I have a general idea, but I don't have a good way of measuring this. But last up, the caravel. And here's a picture of a recreation of actually one of the ships. I think it's the Nina, from Christopher Columbus's 3 ships, the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Marina. Basically, they recreated it. See what it looked like. And the big deal about the caravel is, well, one, it's created in a way where it can, get through the open seas much easier. It lessens the friction with the way it's built, especially the part that's under the water. But more importantly is what are called lantine sails, triangular sails, which this is not showing at the moment, curled up, but those square sails also serve the same purpose, is they can swivel. And so therefore you can catch the wind. No matter where the wind is coming from, you can catch it to push you in the direction you want to go. I love explaining how this works in class, and I'm not a sailor myself, although I know this is quite the art that people get into. If anybody here follows sailing or sailboating and those type of competitions, yeah, I do know from what other people tell me, it's an incredibly hard thing to do. But it was incredibly necessary to be able to sail out into open ocean when all you just needed was a little bit of a gust from no matter what direction was coming, and you could use it by swiveling your sails to the right in the right way, left or right, to catch that wind and push you in the generalistic direction that you wanted to go. It enabled essentially this ship, along with knowing where you're going with the compass and know where you were relatively in the world with the astrolabe, and then other tools that come out after that. But this allowed the Europeans to basically get around the world. Sailing around the world. Dangerous, yes. But they did have the motivation to do so because they wanted that better life. Anyways, that's this lesson here on the reasons behind why exploration starts, what the motivations were. I hope I did an all right job explaining that for you. And I will see you in the next lesson.